Fellow Rotarians and guests, I'm very excited to introduce today's featured speaker, Mr. Glenn Davis. Glenn is one of America's most renowned soccer broadcasters, and over the course of a very celebrated 25-year broadcasting career, Glenn has called many World Cup matches for both the men's as well as the women's tournaments on Fox Sports, ABC, and ESPN. He's the lead play-by-play man for the Houston Dynamo and continues as a national soccer announcer for Fox Sports and ESPN. Mr. Davis also hosts a weekly radio program, Soccer Matters with Glenn Davis, which started in 2002, making it the longest-running English soccer program in the state of Texas, and regularly attracts some of soccer's brightest luminaries from around the world. They all think the world of Glenn Davis, and they're all too eager to join him on his program and his podcast. Glenn's a former professional soccer player. He holds a U.S. Soccer A coaching license, which is the highest coaching level one can achieve. And he's also a founder of the very notable Houston Hurricanes Youth Soccer Club here in town. However, most importantly to Glenn, I'm sure, is his role as a year-round advocate for pediatric cancer research through Kick Cancer. Glenn hosts annual soccer camps to raise lots of money for pediatric research and serves on the board of directors of Curing Children's Cancer Fund. Time permitting, Glenn, perhaps maybe you could spend a couple of minutes sharing some of that very important work that you do on behalf of that outstanding charity. And with that, my friends, it is truly my great honor and privilege to present to you my amazing friend, Mr. Glenn Davis.
Chip, thank you very much. First of all, I'm very honored and privileged to be here with all of you. Now, I'm going to hope that I don't bore you with a lot of soccer talk over 20 minutes. I know I'm not going to change your lives, but I'm definitely going to be speaking about a sport in the context of sports in America. And really the question I'm going to pose out there is, where is the sport of soccer now, as opposed to through my lens when I was a kid growing up in New Jersey. So I'm going to reference Houston in this too, because there are a lot of milestones and interesting things that have happened in the city of Houston when it comes to the sport of soccer. Just to address your question, Chip, yes, pediatric cancer means a lot to me. I became an advocate for it because of a sister and a brother-in-law who are in the medical profession. And, a light hit me one day and I just said, great, I'm calling hundreds, thousands soccer games and radio shows, but is there something more I can do? So that was my move towards a little bit of community service. And obviously I know that's what all of you so wonderfully do with the Rotary Club. My first ever Rotary Club meeting was in the Virgin Islands because my brother was a liquor importer down there. So I used to get dragged to those meetings with him. I really wanted to be on the beach, but the more I sat in on these meetings, the more I found it very, very interesting. And he told me this morning that he attended meetings in places like Paris and The Hague in the Netherlands, and that they were always great stops for him during his business career. So let's talk a little bit about the big picture of the sport of soccer in this country. And I'm not going to wow you with names and a lot of these things. What I am going to try to impress upon you, again, is the slow growth that this sport has made. And it may be not your sport, but it is a part of the sports landscape in the United States in a much bigger way now. So growing up in New Jersey, I was fortunate that I was around ethnic pockets around the Hudson River in New York City, and these very defined areas, whether it was a German area, an Irish area, a Scottish area, Portuguese area. These areas were really defined now. It's not like that anymore. But I had a coach come out from that community into New Jersey and begin working with a bunch of suburban kids. So we were about 25 minutes west, 25 minutes west of Newark Airport, that many of you have probably landed at and said, man, what a armpit this is. But we are the Garden State. We don't get judged specifically on Sopranos and the show The Jersey Shore, which I'm sure none of you have ever watched, I hope. If you have, don't admit it on this call right now. So two things lit the game for me. I had an older brother playing, got drafted professionally, had an unbelievable youth soccer coach that made this the greatest sport in the world, Scottish man, recently passed. And then I grew up by Giant Stadium in the New York Cosmos. And there were defining moments in the sport of soccer in this country. One of them was when the great Pelé, who just turned 80 years of age, came to America. The next one after that was when we hosted the '94 World Cup, because that forced us to reform a new professional league, which is the current Major League Soccer. And then we had David Beckham arrive, who shined the light of our league to the rest of the world. We have a team in this league, the Houston Dynamo. Some of you will know that name, some of you won't. So the youth game was very different then, because it was not a suburban sport. It's a truly suburban sport now. You hear all the time, pay to play, and all these things about how it's so embedded now in our youth soccer community. And you know, there's a lot of questioning around the changing of money in the youth game and all those things. Fact is, it's here, it's arrived, it's huge at the grassroots level. Those years I went to watch Pelé and players like Franz Beckenbauer at Giant Stadium, and Chip knows this, there were crowds of 50,000 people. So if you're a little kid and you got the best soccer coach, or a teenager, you got an incredible soccer coach, and you're combining that with actually going into stadiums of 50,000 people to watch soccer players, you're well on your way to getting hooked. And that's really how I got hooked to the game, and how I've been able to avoid the corporate world my whole life, being involved with something I absolutely love. So we move on from there, and now the game is in the suburbs. So back then, nobody knew anything about soccer in the suburbs. It was all ethnic based. It was around cities like New York, Boston, St. Louis, great pockets of ethnic areas all over the country. So now it's in the suburbs. Now you can get a national team player from Mississippi or Alabama, which, you know, in the 70s, there probably wasn't a soccer ball within the state limits down there, I would imagine. So the game has grown exponentially there. From a participation standpoint, there's probably, this is an estimate, 13 million people involved. A lot of those are unregistered soccer players, and then there's probably 3 million that are registered. So the youth and adult participation, Mary DeBausch, I think, is on this call. Mary had a lot of input and work put into the adult soccer community here in Houston. She can tell you how diverse it is and how amazing it is. And we are one of the great soccer cities in America when it comes to people that love the sport, are engaged with it. Our MLS product is trying to become relevant. So that's still a work in progress, but we regularly get packed stadiums when games are here. And we're hoping in 2026 to be a host city for the World Cup. Now, think of the Super Bowl, multiply that by big numbers, and you get 6 games here. The eyes of the world will be on us if we get the World Cup in Houston. And there's no reason why we shouldn't, but that's always a process that has to be done. But 2026, with the US, Mexico, and Canada co-hosting the World Cup, could be an amazing time for people here in Houston. And you can only imagine a kid being at home with his father thinking, hey, we're going to a World Cup game. I mean, it's every 4 years. Every single game is indelibly etched in the minds of people. And I like it from the standpoint, I get the whole corporate thing and the amount of money that's going to come into Houston and the light that's going to get shined on us, but I simply love it from the standpoint of how many kids it can affect from a player development standpoint, who are one day going to use that as a defining moment, much like I had as a kid. You know, when I went to Madison Square Garden, you couldn't even watch the World Cup on TV, and watched it on a screen with 18,000 Germans and Dutchmen. My father took me into the garden. It was unbelievable. And I never forget that moment. So, adult youth community in the United States, off the charts. We move on to the college game. All the different colleges play the sport. The NCAA has different divisions. There's NAIA schools. Junior colleges have tremendous programs. We used to have a great one in San Jacinto till they kind of closed that here in Houston. Then you move on to the professional game. And the professional game, was on life support a number of times. I played in a bunch of those leagues where, you'd go to your locker after practice and your check would be there, and you'd race people to the bank in order to make sure your check was gonna go through, because you never knew how much was in the account actually. So I've had the ability to bridge like those times. Playing on a pro soccer team in Houston when I came here in '84, playing in Butler Stadium, Del Mar Stadium, and then going and playing in the Silver Dome on the road, or the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, or some of these, Orlando, in some of these bigger stadiums, and we would play in a high school stadium. We would also practice at Houston Baptist University, and we'd be showering, and a guy would come in the locker room and he'd yell, "Hey, you soccer guys, get out of here! The Rockets are here!" And Hakeem and Bill Fitch would come in, and we were told to hurry up and scramble, and we'd be like, "Hey, wait a second, we're professional athletes too, at a different level." So we jump in our Rabbits, and they jump in their Mercedes Benzes, and drive home. So the professional game now. Major League Soccer's been around for 25 years. I'll start with MLS. It's a league that's been around now 25 years, and obviously COVID has affected all sports. Back in the early days of this league, you could buy a franchise for $2 to $5 million, $3 to $5 million probably. The Crafts did that, the Hunts, a lot of the people that remain still involved in the sport. North Carolina's Carolina Panthers owner just bought a franchise for $325 million. Somebody's got to show me the numbers on this, but the sport has grown exponentially, and its popularity at the MLS level has grown quite a bit. Now averages 21,000. I like to take Atlanta with Arthur Blank out of there, and I like to take Seattle out of there to get to the real number, because those are two markets that regularly draw 40,000 to 50,000 people a game. So if you take that out, I think you're probably around 18,000, 19,000. We have a stadium built with the priority for soccer in this city now, which is pretty remarkable. So there's 26 teams now. Austin will come into the league next year. Austin is knocking it out of the park. They're going to sell every single game out. They built a $250 million gorgeous stadium with a roof. It looks like a European stadium. They've tied themselves into the local scene remarkably up in Austin with excellent hires when it comes to staff. But they announced their coach at the Continental Club, which is a music venue. They're really very conscious of tying into their community, which the best MLS teams actually do. So after them in 2022, you're going to get a couple more markets. St. Louis will come in, North Carolina will come in, and I believe it's Sacramento. So a league that once had a minimum salary for players of $12,000 is now up to $56,000. And you have some people, foreign stars, that are making up to $6 million a year, like the Mexican star Javier Chicharito Hernandez. So Major League Soccer did it right because they were centralized. It's a centralized league. The contracts are owned by the league. So maybe from that standpoint, they've been able to navigate COVID a little bit better. But they are hurting like everybody else. And, I have one more television game for the Dynamo downtown on Sunday, and they are letting a limited amount of people into games. But nonetheless, they've been affected. The fact that they've just gotten games done, I think, is a pretty good thing, just to kind of, like we all are in some cases, just trying to get through these times here before we look to maybe brighter times. I want to tell you about now the U.S. national teams, and I will tell you, there is a women's league in this country too, the NWSL. That is a league that's in a different place than Major League Soccer. It still needs more investment. It reminds me a lot of the leagues that I was playing in, because it's in a frail place, but wonderfully talented female athletes playing in that league, and they're still fighting to make that stick and really grow Was I supposed to be muted there? Is that a signal that I should go? Yeah, we know the Women's World Cup team has won 4 World Cups. Pretty remarkable. You see all the excitement when they play in the Olympics and World Cups. But conversely, that has not translated into support in their league, which is a little bit strange, you might think, because the same players are playing in that league. Now we see Europe is deciding to get into the women's games with all these huge brands and these big soccer teams with 100-year histories like Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid. All these clubs are now getting into the women's game. So there's an option there, and that's going to push the women's league over here in retaining their players and to try and do things maybe from a healthy pressure standpoint that is better. So the other day, the men put out a roster, the head coach of the U.S. men's national team, and this is kind of a watershed moment. Because of COVID, he couldn't pick any of the players for the national team that are here in the U.S. He picked an entirely European-based team because that's where they're going to play their games. People wouldn't have to travel. But when you look at this roster, it's remarkable. There's about 4 or 5 players on this roster that are playing for the largest teams in the world. And not on the roster, but playing for them. So if you think of that, it's like the Yankees, this stature of team in the eyes of the world. So Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Chelsea, all these huge brands that are amongst the most expensive sports franchise valuation-wise in the world. And these American players are playing. So regularly I can turn the TV on, we can all turn the TV on and watch these guys performing in the best leagues in the world, playing with Lionel Messi, playing with Cristiano Ronaldo. And it's pretty remarkable. At this time, you would have to say the profile of the American soccer player globally when it comes to competition and being able to produce on the field is really at a high now. It's still kind of stunning to people where this rise has come from, and there is more and more talent being developed here in the United States. They continue to make the move over to Europe, and it's exciting. Now, so there you got the national team. I want to take you to another thing that's growing the sport in this country, and it's some of the lower leagues below Major League Soccer that are still considered professional leagues. The United Soccer League is one of them that has a couple of divisions. So in all these cities like Louisville, Tampa, San Antonio, Austin has a team out at COTA where the racetrack is. San Antonio has a beautiful little soccer stadium. They're run by the Spurs, by the way. So this league called the USL is regularly getting 5,000 to 11,000 people at games. You might kind of relate it to AAA baseball or minor league baseball. But the quality of the players are there. The opportunities are there. So now you have these teams that are really, really important in their communities, doing a lot of community work. The players are getting out doing community work. There's more jobs when it comes to being a paid professional soccer player. There are more front office jobs, which can groom people for higher levels and platforming them maybe to Major League Soccer or even to Europe. So the amount of opportunity that's now available in the game of soccer is what really thrills me, because once I got out of it, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And my run in the pro leagues was not the easiest because it's very up and down. Leagues were folding, teams folding. You bounced from market to market. You loved every minute of it, but you weren't getting wealthy. But you were playing against world-class players, and that's what made it fun. And at that time, you're just got a one-track mind. You're trying to be the best soccer player you can possibly be. But now there's all these amazing opportunities, which I think is just absolutely remarkable. So in my day, the only thing I could do was get into coaching. And that's what I did. And I ran a youth club and out at Bear Creek Park. And I used to be out there 7 days a week. I absolutely loved it. Started doing some cooperative stuff with teams in Mexico, where I'd bring teams down there, and they'd put us in front of games in Mexico. And, you know, I'd have 14-year-olds playing in front of 30,000 people. And I love pushing the envelope because from a player development standpoint, I knew that if we just kept playing each other here in Houston, it's not going to cut it. I don't care how good a coach you may think you are, or you have to change the environment. And that was a big part of what I was doing, putting them into differing environments, more difficult environments. So it was a wonderful phase of my life, working with kids, and probably without any question, the most redeeming thing that I've ever been involved in. And I've been pretty lucky, if it all stopped today, to have been some amazing places. You know, calling games in Central America was just incredible eye-opener. You know, when an American team comes to Guatemala City or Honduras, I mean, without mincing words, it's like we have an opportunity to slay the beast here. And it's really, really different. You're going into stadiums with security, you have armed guards around you. It really is different, but it is a little bit fun and cavalier at the same time. And you have to kind of make it like that. I was in a stadium of 60,000 people in El Salvador once, calling Mexico and El Salvador. It was a CONCACAF Central American and Caribbean games. El Salvador was the host. The president of El Salvador at the time was a Harvard-educated guy. And El Salvador's got a lot of problems. I mean, you know, some of the nicest, most amazing people you'll ever meet, but every single home has somebody who looks like they're 17 with a machine gun standing in front of it. And I never forget, I had two guys behind us in the booth with guns, and they got so into the game, they laid their guns down and were jumping up and down, and I'm trying to calm these guys down because they're coming across, you know, on the microphone. And I asked them, I need to go to the restroom. So they kind of follow me out. There's a wave of people. They get me through the wave, and I go into this bathroom. Now, these are not stadiums like what we are used to. These are just concrete masses. People are sitting on concrete. The restrooms are archaic. And I turn the corner, and I hear all this giggling. And I'm like, what is going on here? I turn the corner, and there's three kids, little kids, the little guys, they're maybe 7 years old, in their underwear, jumping around in water that's coming out of a broken pipe. Okay, so I'm saying to myself, this is, first of all, where are their parents? You know, the normal questions that we would ask growing up in the United States. Where are their parents? These guys are having the time of their lives. But you know, it's a story I tell a lot because it just put things into perspective sometimes of really how good we have it here. And we can sometimes forget that. So the sport of soccer through travel gave me a lot of perspective on things globally. And it also reminded me that the power of this brings a lot of people together. The power of this simple soccer ball brings brings people together. I bring this into hospitals for cancer patients, and you can only imagine what handing a ball does to a kid. And their faces change, their demeanor change. If it's a young man from Mexico, now he wants to talk to me about one of the Mexican pro teams, Chivas or Club America. So it's pretty remarkable. So I take you back to the question of where is the sport in the United States, and I got to say it's pretty incredibly healthy. And it's a slow rise, it's a slow build, which I think in the end is better than a quick rush, because I think you lay deeper roots. I think it becomes more meaningful to people. There's amazing people, not only in Houston, but all over the country that have fought, dedicated time for the right reasons to this sport. And it really is remarkable. And I think we always have to condition it and put it in context with, look, we're going up against traditional sports in America, basketball, baseball, and football, okay? So for anyone to ever think it's going to be the priority, we're kidding ourselves. We have three traditional sports, unlike other countries in the world, unlike other countries. So, you know, whenever I I get somebody from outside the United States telling me that, you know, we're not a good soccer country, I quickly can put it into context for them, because there's a lot of things happening now that are turning a lot of heads. I think we have a long way to go in the media. I'm in the media. Major League Soccer doesn't get the ratings. Mexican League gets the ratings for obvious reasons. Big international games get the ratings. But Major League Soccer still has a lot of work to do when it comes to getting ratings and penetrating that sort of market. Mainstream in Houston doesn't talk about the sport of soccer. You know that. I'm over at ESPN, ESPN Radio, and you know, the good news is I'm embedded there. So now people respect the sport at the station more. And I think these small kinds of gains and wins are the things that will help gain a little bit more respect in mainstream media for the sport, and not just covering it when a player shows up at a hospital to do pediatric cancer work. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's phenomenal. But I think at some point we have to have real critical analysis of what's going on in the field, more of that specific to Houston, no question. There is no healthy pressure for the Houston Dynamo, and they need it. There is no healthy pressure for this commentator, and he needs it. At the end of the day, when I pose the question, is the sport in a more progressive place? Through my lens, it clearly is. The league continues to expand. I hope the lean goes back a little bit more to focusing on the competitive side, but the talent in the league now is exceptional, and it's one of the top 10 leagues in the world. No question. It's one of the top attended leagues in the world also, and I think these are some things that if you bring these facts out, people don't know, and it does turn your head, just because we simply don't have enough mainstream media coverage of it, and that has to be earned. I'm not saying it has to be a given. If you don't sell your stadium out, you're not going to get mainstream in Houston. So that's a big part of the challenge that the Houston Dynamo have in the future. But you know, to be privileged to speak to you for a little while, I hope that wasn't all over the place. I want to thank you for that, and I also want to thank you for all your service, because I think it's important for everybody to do something for your community in some shape or form, whether that's just being good to your neighbors and connecting, or doing something charity-wise. It's all a winner. The last thing I will say is we generally have a charity dinner every year. We bring over a legendary player from Manchester. I have a great friend who's an author, Tom Clare, and he's fighting cancer. He's been fighting it for 2 years. Guy's the bravest guy on the planet to me. I just drove down to Louisiana to see him, but he's an incredible author. He knows the history of Manchester United and everything going on there. But we've done this banquet over the years, and it's organic. It's not a corporate thing. It's just people like myself and soccer community people getting together, putting on an event. We may raise 8 to 10 grand when it's all said and done. It goes to the hospital, but the biggest thing is really just continuing to create awareness for pediatric cancer. So that's kind of my connection, thanks to my sister. So thank you for letting me have a little bit of your time. I hope I didn't bore you all too much. And Chip, thank you for allowing me to come and meet with your Rotary group. And again, keep up all the work, everybody. Keep up all the good work. Thank you.
Glenn, I've got a question. First of all, thank you very much for that, and hopefully for the non-soccer fans amongst us, hopefully that edification helped you understand a little bit why we are so passionate about that sport. But Glenn, could you talk just briefly about the disconnect? Because when you look at all the surveys of the fastest growing sports in the United States, soccer is the number one. I mean, especially at the youth level, more kids, and I'm including both little girls and little boys, are joining soccer teams at under 4, and they're playing right through high school, intramurals at college. Why is there a disconnect, do you think, Glenn, from the fastest growing youth sport in the United States, and why does that not translate into a full stadium at BBVA Compass, and arguably one of the most culturally diverse cities in the United States?
Yeah, it's a great question. I talk about it a lot on the radio show. It's not one that's easily answered in a short amount of time. I would simply, in a synopsis, put it like this. When professional soccer came back here, everybody was excited, 2006 and 7. The league only had 11 teams at that time when the Houston Dynamo won their titles, 11 or 12. But we got gifted the best team in the league. Everybody was so excited about the return of professional soccer. Then they realized they inherited the best team in the league. They won 2 titles, right? Robertson Stadium had wonderful crowds. It was a great organic moment. Then the whole move to going into a new stadium. I remember distinctively saying this on the radio. You got to be careful not to go too corporate here, because people are having a great time. They're tailgating. It's a little bit of a looser environment. It's fun. It reminds us a little bit about games in South America. Not to the point of dangerous, but just good fun. And it was such a diverse mix of people. And it just slowly lost its steam. I think we sat on it with this new stadium. That was the time to be working extremely hard. And I think we fell behind in a lot of areas. And look, you make the playoffs once in 7 years. Winning and losing is only a part of it. But it is a big part of it. But there are a lot of components, I think, to making a professional franchise translate. I have a lot of other thoughts on it. I wouldn't want to express them right now, because I think at times we just really lost sight of the big prize, and that's kind of left us where we are. And I think people are working hard to try and get it back. But because people participate doesn't necessarily turn them into fans. And you got to remember, every weekend bars are filled in Houston with people who are fans of teams from all over the other world. And you've got the top 3 or 4 leagues in the world. You can watch every single game in their league on television. You're competing with that. No excuses, though, for Houston not to be selling out their stadium. This is one of the most diverse soccer cities in the entire United States. No question about it. And I see it every weekend. I mean, a couple blocks from me, every time Columbia plays, I see, all these people in Colombian jerseys, and they're all potential Houston Dynamo fans. And I think we have to go after the authentic soccer fan here in Houston. Not the Rocket fan, not the baseball fan. We have to go after this unique group of fans that can become some of the most loyal groups you could ever have. And that's not to say you're not concerned about people that love other sports, because they will come to the games too. But I think the focus has to be on the authentic, and that means you got to get into those communities. You got to know what they like culturally. You got to find their leaders. You got to be foot soldiers. You got to go mano a mano, and you got to get in there, and you got to have people that are capable of talking to them, and finding out what it is they want out of a professional soccer team. And a lot of it will come down to playing style, in-stadium game experience, things like that. But it's not an easy question to answer, Chip. And look, mistakes have been made along the way. There's no question.
Yeah. John Moyle.
Yeah, it was great to hear what you're talking about. I grew up in soccer in Europe, and soccer has always been the #1 game in our family. And I was in New York back in the days of Pelé and Beckenbauer, and really enjoyed the games up there. Of course, the league didn't do too well later on. But now I can see here with my own family, I have 2 grandchildren that is very much into soccer. The youngest one, he's top notch. I mean, he is the one that scores all the time. But the oldest one just got certified as a referee. And he's now referee for local games up in Kingwood here. And so it's great to see how the kids have been so enthusiastic about the game. And of course, we are now able here to watch all the major games around the world on our TV, which hasn't been that many years that has been possible. So it's fantastic, I think, to see the development of soccer in the country. And I think he would do very well in the future now. They are so much into, on the school level, they're all training there every weekend. And so it's great. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well,
Wayne Shopper, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Well, a statement. In about 1988, I was chairman of the UIL Athletic Committee, And that's the year that we put soccer into the UIL. Now, I had to fight the football coaches all across the state of Texas in order to get soccer put in. And since then, here in Spring Branch, you can see soccer growing and growing and growing, with one of our high schools even going to the state championship. All of the students there at Springwoods that were on this team were from, I think, 7 different countries. But soccer here in Spring Branch is really growing. You can come out any night of the week and see soccer going on about 8 or 10 different fields.
Yeah, each and every weekend the fields are packed, and both of you guys, it's just amazing that I'd be on this speaking to a Rotary Club and you tell me that story about you and the UIL. That must not have been an easy fight against the football coaches back then, because we know what football is here. But you know, the generational turnover is the thing. I mean, I had a father that was a traditional sports guy and played football and baseball in college, and then generations turn over. Kids that I've coached now are coaching their kids or are still in soccer as professional coaches, and that's the beautiful thing that we just heard from John, is that, you know, now we're supplying referees and they're sticking with the sport. So from that standpoint, it's just off the charts healthy.
Yeah, Glenn, one thing I was going to say, our son began playing maybe 13, 14 years ago in private school. And at the time, he was in high school. All of the coaches had been raised abroad. And it was that way throughout his high school career. But now it's getting more and more where the coaches in these private schools are American citizens who have been raised here, who've played here. You know, that's obviously, I think, a sign that the sport is slowly but surely picking up. But the nice thing about soccer is that you don't have to be a behemoth. You don't have to be someone who's extraordinarily tall. You know, it is a game that can be played by just about anybody with some athleticism, male or female. So it's a wonderful sport. So
I agree with you 100%. And the one of the best players in the world is 5'6". So
yeah,
to your point, but powerful as can be, explosive as can be.
Hey, Glenn. So I was very fortunate to be able to attend a match back in 2016 in Medellin, Colombia. It was Nacional versus Medellin, and we were playing in the stadium there. So a lot of the stories you were saying about your experience in the stadium, I had similar stories, and I'll tell you what, the amount of passion in the fans for the sport is just unmatched. It was totally insane. It was the best experience at a sporting event I've ever had. Everybody was just 100% focused on the game. Nobody was on their phones. It was just, except for me, of course, I was the only gringo there, but still everybody was just going nuts, like jumping up and down. Like safety was a secondary thought. It was insane. So if you've never attended a football match, soccer match, or if you've attended some locally, I highly encourage you just to go to any match in South America to really see what it's all about.
I was fortunate, Joseph, to catch Manchester United versus Liverpool at Wembley Stadium in London, which are arguably that's probably the most heated rivalry in all of professional sports, and you can literally lose your life if you get caught on the wrong side of the stadium. But I followed Manchester United my whole life, and I sat right in the middle of all the Liverpool fans, and Manchester United hit the post on a shot, and I started to come out of my seat, and I thought that would be a very dangerous move on my part. My friend thankfully was quick enough to hold me down. But you're right, Joseph. The passion on the international stage is just incredible that you just don't even see with any sports here in the United States.
So to localize that, you guys, and this will be the last thing I say, and I better get moving here in a minute, but every weekend we've got these organized supporters groups in Houston for Manchester United, like Chip's talking about, for the Colombian national team, for teams all over the world. And they gather at certain bars and certain pubs. But it's not 2 or 3 guys. It's a lot of people. The Liverpool supporters group meets out on I-10. I've gone to some of their events. So it's pretty incredible. And that also is a bit of a challenge, getting those people to come down and see live soccer and be a part of the MLS, the whole MLS thing. But I want to thank you. Oh, it was great.
Where the Colombian national team meets?
Yes, it's called, is it the Federal? It's on Washington Avenue. I think it's called the Federal, but I'm not sure. But it's right on Washington Avenue. It's very close to, and I'll tell you, Joseph, because you probably would want to go. It's very close. It's if you were coming from downtown and you crossed Shepherd, it'll be on your right-hand side as you get closer to Memorial Park. It's kind of the Standard. That's what it's called. The Standard came to me. That's good.
Glenn, this has been fascinating. Hopefully, when things pick up and to allow fans en masse to attend games, that Chip can set us up with Memorial Spring Branch Rotary night with the Dynamo, and we can all come out and support you guys.
I think between Chip and I, we can get you some tickets. We could get everybody down there. It'd be a fun thing to do, I think.
Well, it would be great, and because it's a wonderful sport, and I think we'd have a wonderful time doing that, and so we look forward to that opportunity.
Yeah, one quick comment to Glenn. Glenn, we have the Rotary International Convention coming here in 2022, and I'm already in the process of scheduling an event at BBA Stadium to see if we can either attend a game or have an exhibition game played while the International Convention is here, because we're expecting close to 40,000 people in town.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Any way I can help, let me know.
Sure. And just on a side note, I played in Leonia, New Jersey soccer, and then went to play varsity soccer at New York Military Academy up on the Hudson.
Oh, awesome. Man, that's beautiful up there on the Hudson.
Well, you didn't tell us that, Chris.
Prize.
See, and I thought there wasn't a lot of soccer connection in this Rotary Club, and look at how much soccer connection there is. So this is amazing.
But look at my last name.
I played 2 years in high school in Zurich.
See that?
In
International.
65 and 66. So
fantastic. Listen, guys, I have to go have another engagement. I just want to, Bill and everybody and Chip, all of you, thank you very much for letting me spend some time with you. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all down the road, okay?
All right, thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye, everybody.
And Chip, thanks for a wonderful program. That was lots of fun and very informative, and hopefully we can get out to the stadium and do it as a club. That would be wonderful.
Let's do it.
That's good.